I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood called Washington Heights. My brothers, Greg and Clint, they were sort of like the neighborhood DJs. They would play block parties. So they had invested in having all of this DJ equipment at my house. I remember just being really small, putting a record on the record player. And I was just a little girl. I was fascinated by these things, but not intimidated by them. And as soon as they left the house, I was, deep into the record collection, playing things that I liked, sitting on our bar with the triple gatefold records out, just looking at all the art. I remember Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road albums, taking my attention for hours and hours. I mean, those were hand-drawn graphics. It was things like that that really caught my attention. I was drawn to music, it was very compelling to me. When I got to high school, house music was just exploding. And so the record stores at that time, they started carrying, a lot of those 12-inch records. My friends in my class, they all wanted to be DJs too. And so they actually had like the dual decks and we'd all play records. I was a girl, so I had to go last. They didn't haze me so much as they made me more serious about it. Catholic high schools were very instrumental in perpetuating house music throughout the city. Some of the more young and enterprising promoters for house music were just going to these Catholic high schools and saying, hey, you look like you could use a new gymnasium, but we could throw some parties in here and we could split some of the profits with you. And they literally began to rebuild these Catholic high schools that had fallen into financial ruin and were, on the brink of closing, some of them. And so, 4,000 kids paying $10 a head or $5 a head to come in and dance to, Frankie Knuckles or Steve Seal Curly or the Hot Mix 5, it was making a huge difference. And these were just juice bars. We just wanted to dance. And so our parents might load us all up in a station wagon and drop us off at, 7 o'clock on a Friday or a Saturday, and then pick us all up at midnight. So that's when they would all end. And those were some of the first spots, and there were clubs like Sawyer's and the Playground and the Powerhouse, the Power Plant, the Music Box, the Loft. Those were the first wave DJs and first wave clubs. And then we get into the beginning, the early 90s. There's like second wave, third wave of DJs. Some of the first clubs that I played at was Shelter and Crowbar and Zentra and Smart Bar and Funky Buddha Lounge. Those were some of my first gigs.
Raise your fist together.
House music is characterized by a 4 on the floor time signature, usually between 120 to 130 beats per minute. You can turn anything into house music. You can take a gospel song and turn it into house. You can take, a rock or a funk song and turn it into house. It is, I would say, the child of disco, taking all the best parts of disco and combining it with this new technology. So the availability of smaller modules, synthesizers, drum machines to create something that was synchronized, but you could also just make it in your homes. And so part of its name comes from music that was made in the producers' houses. And the other part of the name comes from this mythical club called The Warehouse, where DJ Frankie Knuckles, who's also known as the godfather of house, reigned supreme for a few years, but created such a legacy around the way he played and then the culture and the community that was coming to enjoy and express themselves to this music. And so it really developed this culture around house music. The culture around it was very inclusive, very accepting. It was something that really the LGBTQIA plus community initially embraced and showed people how to sort of get their life, at the club. And it became so influential on the South and West sides, these producers taking like small modules like the Roland TB-303 and creating their own songs and sound patterns with it. The difference with disco is that you needed to go into a big studio. They would have multiple musicians working on this one song, and you could have one person with a small studio home setup and create this music. So it was first recorded and passed around on cassettes and reel-to-reel tapes, and then in 1984, Jesse Saunders, Vince Lawrence pressed it up, what would be the first vinyl to have house music on it. So that's the, where sort of the origins start. I would say anywhere between 1977 and 1984, you're gonna get like a few different progressions, prototype of house, then the beginnings of house, and then the actual distribution and export of house from Chicago or from this particular area out into the world. And then it became a global phenomenon. So house music really took off in the UK, in the island of Ibiza, and in London, where it began to top the charts. And it was all the Chicago DJs who had begun to make this new sound, this innovation on disco, but with their own twist and influenced and affected by our environment. I've been lucky to be selected for several music festivals around the world. I have really enjoyed being a part of Lollapalooza, which is the biggest one here in Chicago, and being able to be the first Black woman to play on Perry's stage is, something that nobody can really take away from me. It's like it happened and I was the one. And so that was really cool. I've also played at South by Southwest a bunch of times, also at the Amsterdam Dance Event, ADE, ARC Festival, which is one of the newer festivals here in Chicago. I've played them, for the last 4 years. And my travels as a DJ have taken me all across North America. I've played all over Canada, I've played all over Mexico, in Asia and Europe, Germany and Russia. And so it's been a really great experience to be sort of like an ambassador of house music and be invited to play in all these different places around the world. Being a woman in this world, it is a male-dominated field. I've been very intentional about how I have moved within this world. I think I could see early on that you could get caught up in nightlife, and nightlife really takes no prisoners. And so you want to be vigilant, you want to be aware of your surroundings and who's nearby, and always establishing a certain perimeter around yourself. I think I was intentional in naming myself Lady D because I wanted people to always remember, D, that's me, that's for Darlene, but the lady is for respect. And so if I put that in my name, I would actually have to live up to that. And I think that I've done that. I didn't compromise myself to try to grow in my career faster than I needed to, or use my sexuality even in a way to entice others to want to give me a boost up. I really wanted the music to speak for itself. And I really give that up to the guys that were around me that took me under their wings. It's not about what you're wearing. It's not about how you look. It is about your skill set. And so, you can be cute, you can be pretty, you can be all that other stuff. But when you take all of that away, there needs to be a DJ standing there. And so I never wanted to make this profession into a mockery I think it is exciting that you can make a living and tour the entire world doing this for other people, liberating people on the dance floor, helping them get their lives renewed, refreshed, reminding people of their connection to each other. People dance on a dance floor, you're taking in all of the things. You're realizing that, you can move peacefully in the way that you want, and so can the 1,000, 100, or 10, or one person next to you. And so when you're all bonding in this shared experience, that's a certain euphoria in itself. When you get there, you want to, understand what has just happened, which is you all got lost in the music, and now you're here with each other. And what are you going to do after that? So if you can do that, for a few hours, a few times a week or whatever, I think you're gonna, be happier in life. I started my DJ career in 1995. By 98, I was already mentoring folks to become DJs. And so I've been, teaching people how to DJ all the time. When people approach me and they say, I want to DJ, I say, great. I never discourage anybody from doing it. The smart ones come back and they ask these questions and they continue to grow in their craft. I think you're going to get more, connected to folks. And so that's kind of our job. It's not just a party. It's not just a good time. We really are there for a certain type of therapy. Music is medicine. And if you take that into account, you won't want to minimize, the responsibility of it in any way. So that's how I felt as a woman in this job. I never looked at it as a gendered profession. I just knew that I was capable of doing it and I wanted to do it. And so when I really stepped into it and leaned into, my talents, my innate abilities, my tremendous love for music, I knew that I was not going to get it wrong.